Welcome to FSHD Straight Talk, the podcast where we dive deep into living with FSHD. I'm your host, Tim Hollenback, and I'm on the journey with you. Having FSHD, I understand the challenges it brings to patients and their families. We're in this together, and this podcast is a space where we swap stories, share advice, and talk to experts to get the latest news. There's plenty to say about living with FSH muscular dystrophy, so let's get straight to it. Welcome all to FSHD Straight Talk, another episode here for you. I'm your host, Tim Hollenback, and thanks for joining me as we enter in towards the twilight of this year, 2024 coming to an end, or maybe we're airing this and 2025 is just beginning. Either way, hope you had a great holiday season and look forward to a new year. 2025 seemed to be marking the calendar for all of us as Mark Stone was kind of putting that in our minds, that could be something from the FSHD Society that would be some treatments or something like that, right? The hope. Will it come? I don't know. 2025 is on the brink, maybe. Doubtful because of the fulcrum news, right? But Avidity is coming out with something in the corners of the world that we might be thrust into more hope. Who knows? All I know is that we're here to talk with someone that's going to help us navigate that in this episode today. But before I get too far, I want you to know that you can definitely email me, fshdradio@fshdsociety.org. is the contact. I want to know if you have a guest you'd like to nominate to be on the show. We can reach out to them or maybe yourself. Also, is there a topic we have not covered? I'd love to know your thoughts on that. The topic in today's show is, I really don't know what the topic of today's show is. And that's not necessarily that I want you to now, stop hitting play and go on to something else. It's the fact that when I invited Jennifer Egert, the guest on today's show, to be on and talk about, mindfulness or how to deal with maybe failure or so on. The idea we had was pretty broad. I thought it was more going to be tailored to how do you, use meditation or mindfulness to help you with your, New Year's resolutions or things like that. But that's not at all where the conversation went. It actually got a lot more interesting than that and a little less cliche, I guess. The things we talked about in this episode, yes, we definitely talked about fulcrum. We caught up with what Jennifer Egert's been doing and all her things that she's been a part of for the FSHD Society, as well as our FSHD community. And we talked about the science, but we definitely got into a deep discussion of not just the fact that, how fulcrum didn't go through and it ended. We all know that. But it was really more of this mental approach to not just that, but other things that I think we all cope with in this community. So the things we really touched on, she talked about how she never sees a doctor till recently for FSHD. That was an interesting part of the conversation. I was a little bit taken aback by that. I just thought everybody did. I heard of someone say, it's kind of documenting your demise, thought for sure that she would be like the rest of us. And she saw someone for that. Now she talked about going to the University of Penn, U of Penn for studies and so forth, but she ended up going back there, like a 2-hour ride for her to see this doctor. Those that don't know, Jennifer Egert is a wellness coach, a professional. She's a licensed clinical psychologist, so she has a lot of knowledge of how can we cope with certain things, certain struggles, and how to also acknowledge the good things in our life. Don't take those things for granted. And we did venture throughout those types of topics as the conversation flowed. And every time I tell guests, hey, this is kind of a conversational podcast. This really is. This one, very much so. There's questions I asked for sure and kind of went different directions. But the things I really want you to listen for is, she talks about, how news or social media, these things that come in our life. I know a lot of you out there might be a little apprehensive as a new president comes in, or a new old president, so to speak, I guess, and how that can lead to a lot of anxiety for some. And dealing with anxiety, not just with our disease, but with things changing in the world. And Jennifer has this great way to look at it. Like, think of intake of the news and social media. Think of it like nutrition. Too much of something, she describes it, too little of something, and so on. The type, like if it's junk food, and so on. It's a great analogy that I think it's so simple. I don't know why I didn't think of it that way. And then maybe that makes us think twice when we are digesting whatever news or social media that we may have. And we definitely get on the subject of hope. Jennifer turns the tables on me a little bit at that part of the conversation, asked me some questions because I led her with this question, and it kind of sprung something, I think, in her of like a different direction. She didn't know I was going to go with the answer that I gave her. You'll have to listen to find out. But the question was that I asked her to spawn this was, is hope dangerous? Is hope dangerous? Having it, is it dangerous? And then we go on to describe our thoughts about that. And I think some of you are going to find it interesting, not because I'm interesting, because Jennifer's interesting. And now she flips the tables back on me and kind of asks me that question and give an answer that I don't think she saw was coming. So I hope you enjoy the banter, the conversation. I hope you feel like you're actually a part of it when you're listening. If you even have questions, that you wish you could have asked and you want to ask them, still, you can. You can email me those questions based off this episode you're about to listen to at fshdradio@fshtsociety.org. All the other podcast episodes are out there. Don't forget that. Spotify, Google, etc. Wherever you find your podcast, you'll find FSHD Straight Talk. Episodes from the Wayback Machine to more current. Either way, we've been doing this for a while. We've changed the format within this year. I think it's going a very positive direction. Not sure what 2025 has to bring, but I've loved bringing these podcast episodes to you. If you're watching it or if you are listening to it, either way, it is really an honor that you want to listen, you want to watch. I can't believe it sometimes when I get such amazing positive feedback. I'm like, well, it's just me, sitting in my basement. I've said that before. My studio is in my basement. It's nothing fancy. I'm not a radio professional. Yeah, I've done podcasting a long time, even before people knew what podcasting really was. Did some web radio and so forth. So like, this is a passion project kind of thing. And converting it into what it is now has been amazing. But I can't do it without the people that support it. FSHD Society supports it. The FSHD community, more importantly, supports this. And for that, I love it. And I love doing it. So thanks for being here. I hope you enjoy this episode with Jennifer Egert. And once again, thanks for listening to the FSHD Straight Talk. Now on to the conversation with Jennifer Egert. Hi, everyone. I've got some exciting news for you from the FSHD community. If you've ever felt the unpredictability of FSHD or wish there was, more accurate research and information out there, and I know you have, then listen up. I'm thrilled to tell you about Better Life FSHD, a groundbreaking new research platform from the FSHD Society that's changing the game for those of us living with FSHD. Better Life is your one-stop hub for tracking symptoms, accessing personalized resources like articles and videos relevant to you. And the best part, as you take surveys and track your symptoms, you provide FSHD researchers with better data to understand this complex, understudied disease. And a better understanding can lead to faster treatments, something every one of us can get behind. So head over to betterlifefshd.org and join the study. It only takes a minute to get signed up. Together, we can change the future for everyone affected by FSHD. I've done this. It's a simple process. I challenge you to do the same. Again, that's betterlifefshd.org. Now let's get back to the show. So here today of this episode, as promised, it's a familiar face for many of us in the FSHD Society world and the FSHD community. Jennifer Egert is here, PhD, licensed clinical psychologist, mindful exercise practice expert, in my opinion. She gives a half eye head turn for those that are only listening. So welcome, Jennifer. Thanks for being here, spending some time with us. It's been a while, but I know you've been busy.
No, it's great. I always love sitting down and talking to you. It's nice. It's nice to connect, especially this time of year.
Yes, as this is being recorded, we're roughly a weekish from the Christmas time and weeks away from the new year and things happening and changing. And before we hit record, I I was telling Jennifer, I was looking through the guest lists of like people I've had on in the past, trying to see like who else could I invite in. And lo and behold, I get a message from Jennifer Egert saying, "Hey, it's been a while. How are you doing?" And I'm like, "Oh, there's the guest right there." So I'm glad that we could do this because I think there was a reason for that. And it immediately popped in my head that the community's dealt with a lot of things throughout this year. Um, and if it's disappointment, if it's change, if it's like uncertainty, I think it can be scary for some, it can be desperate for some. Those feelings, not a lot of necessarily positive can sometimes come from that. So I guess it's like where do we start that conversation? For me, it's the first thing that comes to my mind is the Fulcrum trial. Now you were in it, right?
Yeah.
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 So
Yeah.
what was your experience with it?
I was in the study, I guess almost 2 years. So I had finished the first year where you're in the part where you don't know if you're getting the drug or if you're in a placebo. And then in January of this past year, um, I switched over to the open label
Mm,
part,
okay.
which means that once you go through that first year where you don't know if you're getting it or not, because it's all blind, you go into the phase of where you know you're getting it and everybody's getting it.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Then you got to that point, you're saying, to the
I
open label.
did, yeah. So I was on the medication from January to September.
Okay.
And I really thought that I was getting a benefit. I thought
Mm,
that I was experiencing more energy. And maybe I was.
mm,
And it's just for whatever reason, the way they collect data was not tapping into the ways that it might have been beneficial. On the
mm,
other hand, we also know how powerful the mind-body relationship is
yeah.
and what it is to know that you're getting something that could be helpful, what that does for our inner states.
Mm,
Um, placebo is a very powerful effect. It's not fake.
mhm.
People say, "Oh, it's placebo, it's not real."
Right, right.
I disagree. I think, our bodies have this innate ability for healing. And I'm not saying, I mean, who knows?
Not
You
not
know,
like cure. I think there's a big difference, right, between healing and cure.
absolutely.
Right.
Healing is about, at least in my mind, healing is about um, being able to live fully and with vitality, regardless of whatever is going on. Um, and we all know that people in this community experience such a wide variety of difficulties and, when it comes to FSHD. So, I think there's clearly, no doubt,
Mhm,
tremendous place, an important place for the medical intervention. And then there's also our mental states,
mhm,
our caring for ourselves and our bodies. That also has a lot to say about our quality of life and how well we can live with all of these things and how good we feel on a day-to-day basis. So I don't really know what it was, but
mhm,
that was my experience. And it was very hard
mm.
when I uh I had felt like I had a safety net.
Okay.
Like I was like, okay, well,
Mm.
at least I know I get to stay on this until it comes to market. So I have the safety net to kind of maybe slow down any disease progression. Because I had the most disease progression I've had over the course of this disease last year.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Um, it was probably like the biggest decline for me. So going on the medication really was like, okay, good. I have a safety net.
Yeah. Can
It's a
you
hard thing.
can
Yeah.
you can you if you're comfortable with it, can you talk about that? Like what were the things that you felt were declining for you in that time?
Yeah. I mean, I feel very lucky given my level of disability with
Mhm.
the illness. And I see myself on the more mildly affected
Right.
side. Um, And I'm ambulatory and all of that. But last year it got to the point where I don't walk without my walking stick anymore.
Yeah.
When I'm outside the house. When I'm inside the house, things are a lot more manageable. But it just felt my balance really was not as good, and fatigue was really a big issue. Um, and I feel like, there was just like, my ability to reach things sort of
Mhm.
is a little bit more difficult. I noticed
Yeah.
changes in my face that I
Mm.
didn't notice before. So it was just this evidence of the progression, and just that I'm walking more slowly, stairs are harder,
Yeah.
and inclines, needing the walking stick. I even got myself a rolling walker.
Mm.
These are things I like to do, and I need to know that I can sit
Yeah.
when I
Right.
need to sit.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when I go to museums, or if I
Mhm.
take a trip, I'm bringing the rolling walker with me
Mhm.
now. So that was a change.
Yeah, there's no question walking slow and fatigue are not a great combination,
No.
because it takes us a while to even get there, and then we're exhausted by the time we do, right? So the respite is needed. Yeah, if you mean like the four-wheeled walker, yeah, with that seat, dude, those are key. Um,
Yeah, and it really opened up a lot for me. It opened up, I think the thing is, as I started to decline, I sort of stopped doing things. And
Mm.
also I lost my dog, so I was not
Oh,
out walking as much too.
yeah,
And
yeah.
then the emotional side of that, I'm sure,
Mm.
was affecting a lot of
Oh,
stuff.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
so
That's
it's all of that.
yeah. Without a doubt, I can relate to that because to me, yeah, losing a dog was, I mean, I think I was more upset than like my aunt when she passed years before. I feel bad about saying that, but it's like you're so close to that creature. It's like unbelievable.
It's that attachment and that companionship
Yeah.
always together.
Hmm.
He was like my little
Yeah.
my companion, my baby, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
A lot of
I get
changes
it.
last year.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I know my dog once in a while will make an appearance right about here on the show because he's like, "Where are you?" And then he'll like wander off.
When
Uh,
did you lose your dog?
let's see. I lost the golden retriever we had. She was kind of like I said, like training wheels before kids.
Mm,
So we had her as a puppy and we were navigating that. Me and my wife kind of, unbeknownst to us, were kind of understanding like what what one was good at compared to the other and so forth. And then we had
yeah.
kids, and then it was about, I don't know, man, it's got to be 7 years, I think now that she
Oh,
passed away. And it was like, it was a big hit to the gut. The whole experience, taking her to the vet. Oh my gosh, it's terrible. In that time, the dog we have currently, like we just adopted because he was at like a shelter, and we felt
mm,
like, oh, we should really help another animal. And she was at her end. We knew it, but we didn't know what that meant. It
mm.
could be a year, whatever. And she was slow going, but they got along great. And then, and then she passed, and now we just have Cooper, and he's definitely different. But once again, the companionship, hence why he comes in here. I've given up on closing the door because he scratches at it. So I'm like, just let him in. So yeah,
Right.
you add those emotional piles, right? I
Yeah.
mean, I'll do that. Some people when they're like, "Oh, I got this and I got this and this happened and this," I'm like, "Oh, you're piling." We just keep stacking, and like we could do that all day long, and it just eventually when is it enough? So
Mhm.
I can definitely understand your point. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's all that together is kind of a bad timing.
Well, you know me, I'm gonna challenge that idea that it's a bad time. I mean,
Yeah.
well, not challenge it, but
Yeah.
it was definitely really difficult.
Mhm.
On the other hand, there were also some things that come out of that. And I think that this is always true.
Mhm.
When do we grow? We don't grow during the
Mm.
good times. Not that that means that we don't want good times. Of course we do.
Yeah.
But we grow when we're challenged.
Mm.
And sometimes we have to go through periods of, I kind of look at it almost as like, a little bit of like a hibernation, or licking our wounds a little bit, like to
Mm.
bring in the animal metaphor since we're talking about dogs. Uh,
Yeah.
uh, because something inside of us is shifting and changing.
Mm.
And change challenges us. And when it's a really emotional or scary, we can get really overwhelmed. So sometimes we actually really need to get a little quiet,
Mm.
and allow ourselves to feel whatever it is that we're feeling, so that we can come to a conclusion. And actually what happened is, I'm telling you all about my year, Tim. At the end of the year, I was convinced I was losing my ability to walk. Like, I
Yeah.
really thought that this was it. And I live alone, and so I was very scared about, like, I
Mhm.
don't know how to do this. I don't know
Yeah.
how to do this by myself. I'm not prepared. I thought I was prepared. I'm not prepared. And then it really occurred to me, I got to a certain point where, I don't know, maybe I was out for a day and I was like walking pretty easily. You know how it goes up and down day by
Oh
day.
yeah.
On
Yeah.
and I was like, huh. And I realized I actually did not know how much of what was going on with me in terms of walking
Hmm.
was real decline, and how much of it was um something that I was telling myself. Again,
Yeah.
like, we talk about placebo. Our
Hmm.
brains convince us of stuff. My brain was convincing me that I was losing my ability to walk.
Right.
And I think probably a lot of it was grief in the end, from my dog.
Mm.
Um, so I was like, you know what? I need to figure this out. So I'm getting on the road.
See.
Oh my God. So in the beginning of this year, I took 6 weeks
Wow.
and I worked from the
Yeah.
road. I did a 6 week road trip. I'm in New York City, and I
Mhm.
drove down the East Coast all the way down to the Florida Keys, where I have friends that live.
Wow.
And I took time, I stopped at friends in Virginia and North Carolina. I went to Savannah, where I've always wanted to go. I got the walker so I could walk around Savannah,
Mm.
which I did. And then I went to Florida, like the northern part of Florida, where I had friends that I visited. And then I was down in the Keys for 2 weeks at my friend's house. And then on the
Wow.
way back up, visited other friends, stopped in Nashville and met up with some friends, and,
Okay.
and near Asheville, visiting people, and back in DC. And I took 6 weeks where I was road tripping to figure out, actually, what can I do? And knowing that if this is not working out and this is not good for me,
Hmm.
then I could just get in the car and drive home.
Mm.
And I realized that, yeah, there was decline last year, but
Yeah.
no, I'm not losing my ability to walk right now.
Hmm.
And I can do a hell of a lot more when I have to.
Yeah.
Uh, and so all of that stuff
Mm.
gave me a really amazing experience as
Mm.
well, you know?
That's not now. Not everyone can take the 6 week road trip,
Absolutely.
and
I
I get that.
recognize.
Yeah, and like we had a guest prior that was actually talking about road trips he would take in his electric car, and like he's like, you can do this, um,
Mhm,
and he was a little more farther along in the
mhm,
progression of FSHD, so he saw it as kind of like, if I can do it, you can do it, kind of thing. And then to your point, like if you can do it, why can't somebody else? But you're right,
yeah.
like, you can turn that into whatever that you said, quiet, right? To get a little bit quiet. Do you mean
Mhm.
for you it was kind of getting away, doing those things, just less noise around you? Is that kind of what you mean, like those stressors?
Well, I think when I was talking about quiet, I was talking about, like, during a period where you're sort of like a little, sad and feeling like sometimes we need to kind of turn inside for a little
Mm.
bit and just sort of like allow ourselves our experience. But I did feel like in order for me to understand what was really going on, I actually needed to leave home. I
Yeah.
needed to step outside of the familiar environment. And road trips for people with disabilities, I think, is the way to go, because you can
Mhm.
always, it's never easy, I think, traveling, but if you really like it, you could find hotels with handicap accessibility, and at least
Mhm.
in your car, if it's accessible for you, then
Yeah.
you can pace things in a way that works for you. But I guess I was talking more about like, I think sometimes we want to like bypass the difficult moments and just go to, how do I fix this? How do I,
Yeah.
you know,
Right.
and
Right.
understandably, right? Of course. Like the whole thing with Fulcrum, it was really disappointing. But to deny that that's disappointing and just like, oh, there are better things on the
Mm,
horizon, that
mm,
very well may be true. But like,
right.
it's okay to also feel disappointed,
Mm,
and allow yourself the whole range of your human experience.
right. Yeah. And from your perspective, when you heard the news of that it was, they were stopping it.
Mhm.
What was your initial thoughts and so forth when you heard about it? Oh boy.
You really want to know?
Say you can say as much or as little as you want. There's no pressure here, but this is a safe
Oh,
place. But
right.
I get it. It gets broadcasted too.
It does. My first reaction, I was really pissed off because I found out by opening Instagram that
Ah,
the study that I was in
right.
was being discontinued.
Ugh.
And my first reaction was like,
Mm,
what kind of BS is
mhm,
this?
mhm.
I've been traveling up and down to my study site. I've been given so much, and you're going to inform me
Oh
via
my gosh.
Instagram. So I kind of went into this very angry state for a while and did some very serious advocating for myself. So I understand from a legal standpoint that they had to, if they've had significant data, they are required by law, because there are
Yeah.
shareholders involved,
Yeah.
to report it publicly. So I understand that. But it just didn't feel good. Like, it didn't feel like it was, as a participant,
Mhm.
um, to really not have
Mm.
um, a personal acknowledgement and
Yeah.
connection, um, when the study initially ended.
Mm.
And then the next thing is I was scared.
Mm.
Again, like I said, that safety net was gone.
Yeah. Safety net's gone.
Yeah,
And what's really coming after it? And then is that even going to work? Right. Going back to my analogy, like the piling, well, this didn't work. Are we ever going to get a treatment and so forth? And I saw that a lot on social media, the anger side for sure.
yeah,
Um, People saying, well, I knew it wasn't going to work, very flippantly. And I can't tell people how to feel. And I definitely don't agree with the Pollyanna positive, gee whiz, this will be fine. It's not
no,
fine. And I like how you started your experience in sharing that with us was I was pissed off.
yeah,
I mean, that's honest. And I think people have
yeah,
to be honest with themselves when they experience that. So I don't want to be judgmental and say, oh, this person should have reacted that way or not. But I guess my point was, I think I appreciated people willing on social media when they hear the news to just put it out there. Like, I feel like this, you know,
yeah,
unfortunately, it wasn't a lot of positive, but
right,
how I guess the only positive is they stopped it in a point where if it wasn't working, it wasn't working. Right. It's like,
right.
what are you going to do? Um, are things on the horizon? Is like kind of you mentioned? I don't know. I have no idea, to be honest with
Oh, there are, Tim.
you. Is there? Is there?
Honestly, you know
Here
what?
comes cynical Tim. Remember, this is, I'm not a
Well,
positive
yeah, I
person by
know. I'm
nature.
gonna I'm gonna knock you around a little bit with
Good,
that.
good, good, good.
I think, first of all, a couple of things.
Yeah.
It's really important for us to be able to be honest
Mm,
about what our feelings are about things, and we have to go through that process of grief.
mhm.
Of grief of this loss, and
Right.
not denying it. You know, and then you know, it can be really hard because we can go down a hole,
Mhm.
um, of, well, this didn't work, we're all screwed, you know,
Mhm.
which actually is not accurate. It's actually not true.
Mhm.
You've had Peter Jones on here, right? Have you-
No,
Peter
you're not.
Jones. Oh, you should totally speak with Peter Jones. He's one of the researchers, and I spoke to Peter about it. And
Mhm.
Peter's feeling
Yeah.
about it. I mean, I don't want to speak for Peter. I don't know if I should speak for Peter, but
Mm.
the one thing that he did say that I think he would be fine with me sharing is, he said it is better for the community that a mediocre drug with, if there's any benefit, minimal, does not come to market.
Right.
It's better for the community for something that
Mhm.
really works,
Mhm.
um,
Yeah.
come to the market. And I mean, you saw the preliminary results with Avidity. I know it's hard to feel optimistic after you go through something
Mhm. Yeah,
like
for sure.
something, but Avidity is a completely different mechanism. And
Mhm.
preliminary results from that were incredibly positive, maybe inflated in a way. I don't know. Because it was based on such a small number of people that were in the safety study. I think it was like 14 people.
Okay. Yeah, it's small.
But now they did another cohort, and now they're in their third cohort. They're in cohort C right now, which I believe they just finished
Mm.
recruitment for. That's another 40 people. And then in the spring, my understanding, and again, please, I'm not, a researcher, and I'm not in the middle of all this. But what I had read was that they're recruiting something like 150 people nationwide for a cohort D in the spring.
Mm.
And this drug is really targeting the genetic mechanism.
Mhm.
And this is the direction that I believe also there's a Roche study. I believe that's also, I'm not sure. I shouldn't say anything more about it because it's like, I'm not completely up on it, but I know
Yeah.
the Avidity is moving us in a sounder mechanism treatment
Mhm.
direction than Fulcrum was. A
Mm.
lot of people felt like the Fulcrum drug really was a long shot. It
Yeah.
didn't talk about it that way.
Clearly. Yeah. And obviously clearly it was if it didn't come through. I mean,
That's right.
it was going to be.
Right. But
Hmm.
there are a lot of really, so there's 2 clinical trials, as far as I know, that are actually active right now. And there's more that are coming down the road. It's maybe not as fast as we want it.
Right. I think that's always the issue.
Yeah.
It's great to hear about these things, but people are going, well, it's probably not going to help me. But we hope then it helps the next generation. If that's the hope that you have, it is. Which leads me to this though. Is
Yeah.
hope is hope dangerous?
Can I ask you a question?
Please.
What makes you feel like hope is dangerous?
I was looking through I sit and I reflect on the person I'm going to talk to, who I'm going
Mhm.
to interview. I do try to take somewhat deep dives into what they've been doing lately, some of their works, etc., LinkedIn, and so forth. But for whatever reason, when I was going through the part where I wanted to talk about fulcrum and this and that, just I wrote how to cope. Positive doesn't change the outcome, meaning positive attitude doesn't necessarily change the outcome of a drug. Is what I was saying. And then I wrote hope is dangerous. Is hope dangerous?
Mhm.
So it I always try to think of the perspective of the person listening, which is really where most of my questions come from. If I was listening to this for the first time and I had the opportunity to ask something, I would ask that. And you always hear that word hope, 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 hope. Um,
What does hope mean to you? Like what do you,
a
when you say
chance, a
hope,
chance.
a chance?
You got a shot. That to me, for me personally, that's what like hope means. And I can even equate it to something simple like sports, right?
Mm.
If for my baseball coaching life, if our team is better, but we kick the ball around the field and the lesser team, in our opinion, starts to take advantage of those things, I think we've just sprinkled hope on them. They only have hope that they have a chance. And I've actually told my players, you need to crush their hope. Like enough of that. They don't have it. Take it
Mm.
away, and psychologically, they will start to crumble.
Mhm.
You have to attack it back. Now, that's in a competitive mindset, a little bit different than this, but to
So you
kind of,
already answered your own question.
what's that? Oh, is hope dangerous? Yes, I totally believe it is.
No,
100.
no, that's not
Oh,
the
yes.
question you just answered.
No,
You
hope can be
just said
good.
you got
Hope
to
can,
take away their hope because then they'll
exactly.
crumble. So
Right.
do you want to crumble?
No, but what I mean by I believe it's 100% dangerous is it's dangerous for the other team. You just had it. We just took it away. It
Yeah,
can be taken away by things that are out of your control, of course. Hence why it's hope. It's not a sure thing.
no,
That's why it's just a chance.
I don't think that hope can be taken away when things don't go well. I
Mm,
used to, for many years, I worked at the VA Medical Center in New York City. And I was part of a palliative care program. So working with people at end of life, working with people who had, cancer and like they were dying, people who were dying.
right.
And this question of hope was always a discussion. If they're hoping that they're going to get a cure and go back to their life
Mm-hmm.
as it was before they had this metastatic disease that they have been trying to, get treatment for and being really debilitated and bedbound. Is that what people should have hope for at that stage? And that's what we would talk about. And we would talk about, well, what can you have hope for? And people talked about, I can have hope for enjoying whatever life I have left. I can have hope that I am not in pain.
Mm-hmm.
I can have hope that I am able to decide how I want to deal with these things in my life. Um, so I think, when I would never say like hope is dangerous. I don't think any feeling is necessarily
But
dangerous.
are you equating dangerous to bad, like a negative thing?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I
Am I
don't.
misunderstanding you? Yeah, you tell me.
Yeah, I like to take things and absolutely whoop, flip it on their head. It drives my wife nuts because I'm like the majority of the society of the world is like if you say a word, they immediately equate it as either positive or negative. That's the human brain. It's good or it's bad, one or the other. There's not a
Right.
gray. It's like you can't be kind of pregnant. You either are or you aren't. So for me, dangerous can be good. Dangerous can be fuel. It gives you adrenaline. It actually scientifically, if you feel like that, it actually can give you bursts of, I don't know what the chemical reaction is exactly, but it can help. It can actually help you. Just like the word fear.
Adrenaline.
Yeah,
Adrenaline.
adrenaline. People immediately think like fear is bad. Not necessarily. Fear can be
Oh,
good, right? Because so yeah, so like for me, dangerous is like hope is dangerous because you're willing to risk um that you could be disappointed.
okay. I understand what you're saying. So I would say I would say that hope is powerful.
There. That's good. Yeah.
I understand what you mean by dangerous now. I think dangerous for me has kind of like a negative connotation. It's
Sure.
like
Of course.
that it's
Yeah.
threatening and
Yes.
but
Absolutely.
I understand, right? All feelings are contextual.
Mm.
Fear is incredibly adaptive when you are in front of a wild animal that wants to eat.
Yeah.
Fear is necessary so that you can take care of yourself and protect yourself.
Right.
So it's very contextual.
Mm.
Anger, it can be incredibly adaptive.
Mm.
Uh, Even sadness in the way that I was talking about and grief
Yeah.
before, if it slows us down to really reflect and help us think through things in a different way and get connected with what really matters to us and figure out next steps because we're sort of withdrawing a little bit. Um, so I agree with you. It's very contextual, whether or not
Yeah.
something positive or negative. There's very few things that I would say would be all good or all bad.
Right. Yeah.
People hurting other people.
Mhm.
Uh, I think it's really hard to say that there's a good side to that. Um, but yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sort of going off on a tangent
No,
there.
I kind of well, it got a little layer deeper, right, for us. Like it may have we've done
We're
before.
known to do
I'm
that,
pretty
Tim.
sure. Yeah, yeah. But I'd like to be challenged that way because people ask me, wait, like, what do you mean by that? Because um there was there's an artist that I like, a musical artist. His name is Paul Meany. He's a great songwriter in my opinion, and he's a great composer of the music I like. So he sings this song, and the lyric has something to do with like fear. He's like, there's nothing like a little fear, right?
Mm.
And
Can
the
be
social
very
media,
activated.
exactly. So a lot of people responded to that new song he put with that lyric, and some people were like, wait, no, fear is bad. You should trust in God, or you should trust in this. And of course, I couldn't help myself, and I rarely interact on social media, but I did this time. And I said, no, I think I see fear like this. And I used the analogy of like when I started my little baseball business, I was scared out of my mind that this would fail, but I did it anyway. Then that's when courage comes in. You can't have courage if you don't have fear there. It has to come with it. And so fear can be a fuel that you want to succeed. The fear of
It doesn't
failure will always be
paralyze
there.
you. If it
Yes,
doesn't,
it doesn't paralyze you. Correct. Now that's totally different than like an animal wanting to kill us, of course. But to your point, you might do extraordinary things in that situation that you would never think you could do, because of the fear, the adrenaline, and so forth.
you know what? My anger and fear about the end of Fulcrum, how that launched me into something new.
Mm-hmm.
I have not, and this is crazy to say, but I'm admitting this out loud. I have not had a doctor for FSHD.
Okay.
I have not seen
Okay.
any doctors. We all know that often we walk into that neurologist's
Oh, yeah.
office and we know a hell of a lot more about this disease and about what's going on in terms of the research than they do. So I guess, I had this sort of bias, like, what are you going to tell me? I know more than you, so I was like,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
but
Or they document your demise, I've heard someone say.
right,
So
document.
like, what's the point?
Why am I here? For you to document my demise?
Yes.
Um, and so I haven't seen anyone for FSHD for, I mean, they were following me, at my study site, but that's not clinically. That was for the purpose of
Right.
the study. So they don't really give you feedback because they can't, it's
Mhm.
really, they just have to collect data. They don't
Yeah. This
influence
is
that.
data gathering only, really. Yeah.
Right. That's the purpose of research, as it should be. Um, But I have been thinking for a really long time that I should go to UPenn. They have a FSHD specialist doctor there, Dr. Colin Quinn, not
Okay.
the comedian, but the
Oh,
doctor.
the doctor.
Yeah, is at UPenn, and they're an avidity study site. I believe they were also a Fulcrum study site. They've been one of the main hubs of study sites
Okay.
at UPenn. And it's only a 2-hour drive from New
Hmm.
York.
It's not bad.
It's not bad at all. You could do it in a day. And so after that experience where I was like, oh my God, I don't have my safety net anymore, that I was like, okay, you
Hmm.
need to schedule
Mm-hmm.
an appointment at UPenn because you don't want to go anyplace else. You want to go someplace where they're doing the research, because whether
Right.
or not you participate or not in the research, you want to be someplace where they know what's going on and they're
Mhm.
hooked.
Yes.
So a couple of weeks ago, I had my clinic visit at UPenn. And the only reason that
Awesome.
happened now was because of what happened with Fulcrum. And
Yeah.
my fear
Mm.
and my anger was like, what am I going to do about it? I got to do something about this. And
Yeah.
that was after
Mm.
probably a couple of months of feeling really scared and anxious
Mm.
and all of everything in between.
Mm.
Then led me to that. And I believe I'm going to be screened for avidity.
Mm.
We'll see.
Mm.
We'll see.
So,
And maybe I'll be participating in another trial by next year, in the middle of the next year.
yeah.
We'll
So
see.
jump back on the horse, so to speak, right? As they say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, is that
Yeah.
hope? Yeah.
Yeah,
I
it is.
actually, I have a tremendous amount of hope for
Mhm.
avidity. Everything
Yeah.
that I've
Sounds like it.
read, um, you know, I also have more hope. I mean, just think about it. Like how many years have you been involved with the FSHD Society?
About 8. 8 and a half, something like that.
8.5 years.
Yeah.
So 8 years ago, was there anything on the horizon or no?
Not really. I think
No.
that was when like Mark Stone still wasn't quite in the picture. Soon after, I think he was. Then I want to say,
Right.
and then
So
he's
that
the
was
one that kind of
before the
made the
Fulcrum.
promises of 2025, and all of a sudden this energy started coming with, this pace started to somewhat pick up at least, and more interest in the space of FSHD from pharmaceutical companies started growing and so on. So yeah, in the span of time that I've been diagnosed to the time we are now, and with the very little, honestly, that I know. I mean, I'm not the guy diving really deep into the science and seeing what's coming on the horizon. I don't know why I don't do that. It's not that I don't care,
Right.
but so considering my limited knowledge of what's really down the pipeline, I feel from my perspective, there's been a lot that have been, at least irons in the fire. So I've heard.
So there is so much. I've been involved with the FSHD. When did I first get involved? I'm trying to remember when we did that very first fundraiser in New York City.
Mm,
Uh, it was at Symphony Space. Bill Monacle, who I don't even know if he's still around anymore. He was such a wonderful guy. And Hannah Latchert, who was a violinist with the New York Philharmonic, along with Stephen Blyer,
yeah,
who,
Stephen Flyer. Yeah.
yeah, but
Yeah.
there was that very first one that we did.
Mm-hmm.
Or my aunt is Judy Seslow and Beth got together and did all of those amazing concerts in New York City with Stephen Blyer and other people. It was just, they kind of took it over, but it was that very first event. I gotta say that must have been in the early 2000s. It was a
Okay.
really long
It's been
time.
a while. Yeah.
And I had been involved in the FSHD Society before that. And
Mm,
so when you have this arc of 20, 25 years
mm-hmm.
of seeing where we were before anyone even identified the gene, before
Right.
anyone even knew what DUX4 was. I remember going to visit, Peter Jones at his
Mm.
lab at UMass and seeing all the frogs that they were studying,
Yeah.
and sort of stuff.
Yeah.
It- It's hard to be patient.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But when you look at the arc of things, where we are right now is remarkable.
Mm.
Where we are right now with three clinical trials, because I'm including Fulcrum, because even though the losmapimod didn't work out,
Mm-hmm.
it taught the community how to run a clinical trial for people with FSHD. It was an impetus for this clinical trials network, which is all over the country, because when you have a rare disease, how do you get enough patients
Yeah.
in? You know, it 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 really is the model for everything to come
Mm-hmm.
about what worked and also what didn't work, right? And I'm not talking about the drugs specifically. So there was a value of it. So it's again, what are we hoping for? It
Yeah.
wasn't what we hoped for the outcome, but boy, it gave us and the research community a lot.
So do you think then that could be a fail forward moment?
It definitely moved us forward.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I think that regardless of outcome,
Mm-hmm.
everything is an opportunity.
Mm. True.
Everything is an opportunity to learn something and can move something forward. If you look at all of these stories about these really successful people, every single one of them have stories of tremendous failure.
Yeah.
And it's not about success or failure in that one moment. It's about what is it that we do with that? And I know, given what happened with losmapimod, even how it ended in the end, and how it ended, and what I was angry about in terms of the communication with families and the communication with patients and all that sort of stuff. I know that our experience is going to make sure that future studies are going to have different protocols in place so that something like that doesn't happen again.
Yeah.
And that communication and caring for our community is, really solid, that everybody's really, taken care of. So I do feel, and I don't think that that's like, being a Pollyanna or anything. I think
It's real. Yeah.
think it's real. And the other thing I want to say to you too,
Yeah.
it's not just about you. I think it's about everyone. This idea, you ask about hope, and it's like, what can we hope for? But I also believe that hope, like I was saying with the patients I work with at the VA, hope has to also be based in a certain understanding of reality.
Mm.
And I
Sure.
think a lot of people that are feeling hopeless right now,
Mm-hmm.
if they actually knew and understood where we are right now with everything that's happening,
Mm-hmm.
um, I mean, it doesn't mean that there aren't things for us to feel really scared and,
Yeah.
sad, but there's no doubt, and it's like factual, that this research, there will be something for us. I don't
Mm.
know how quickly it's going to come.
Yeah. And that's farther along than when we began our journey with this,
Oh
right?
gosh.
I mean, it just is. So at least there's been progress.
Yeah.
Hence,
And
that's what fuels
fortunately
the
for
hope.
some of us, they don't have the time to
Right.
wait,
Right.
and that's very hard to accept. My father,
Mm-hmm.
couldn't benefit from it,
Yeah.
you know, but we're in a time where I don't know when we can expect it, but I know if they're doing this cohort D, which I believe, I don't know if that's going to be the last cohort for the Avidity trial. And then, so they're going to be recruiting next
Mm-hmm.
year, and then they're going to need a year to collect the data around it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what that means, from where we are right now. That
Yeah.
probably means another 2.5 years out for the Avidity data to be complete. Um, and there's going to be opportunity for people to participate in research if they're
True.
eligible.
Mm.
Um, there's a lot to be hopeful for. And the FSHD Society, those universities, FSHD University, the talks, they're always
Yeah.
having researchers come. They're
Mm-hmm.
so good, to just learn what's actually really happening. And again, not to deny the difficult feelings, but
Mm-hmm.
also know what's going on out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Education helps, right? If knowledge is that power is the reason why that's said. We're always
Yeah.
fearful of what we don't know or what we don't understand, to the bad
We
side
can
of fear,
convince
right?
ourselves something else is
Yeah.
true. We
Yeah.
can really
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah. And yeah. So one of the last questions that I wanted to ask was still kind of in the same mindset, I suppose, of like how the Fulcrum trial ended and so forth. But there's other changes just in the world in general, right? People in general are having problems with mental health. Either it's the stigma, it's I don't know, denial. It's not part of their life practice. And I've heard this a lot, in social media with a new president coming. People were worried that over the holidays, the suicide rate was going to go through the roof in comparison to other years because of what so many people are upset of what could be coming. What could be? It is still unknown, in my opinion, of what could be coming. So, you know, as they work themselves through these holiday times into the next year and so on, from your expertise, what's the most valuable thing they can do to maybe keep hope?
I just keep thinking of really bad jokes right now. I'm sorry.
You can. Hey, I'm down. What do you got?
I was going to say alcohol, but I didn't
Yeah.
mean
Right?
that.
Oh, I know. A
I
lot of people
don't
would
mean
say
that
that
at
though. Like,
all.
I don't even drink whatsoever, and I'm not gonna lie.
I don't
And part of
drink
me thought of
either.
that. I was like, well, they could just drink, you know,
You know what? It's so
just
funny. I
drink it away.
feel like at this moment, I am better able to deal with what's going on with FSHD than I am
Yes.
to deal with what's happening in the wider world.
Bro. Yeah.
I'll tell you what I suggest to
Mhm.
myself as well as to my patients.
Mhm.
I think we need to look at news and social media as nutrition.
Mm.
You don't
Mm.
want to overeat.
Mm.
Overeating is not good for your system.
Yeah.
And you want the quality of what you are ingesting to
Mm.
be of nutritional value. So if you are taking in a lot of junk food, so
Yeah.
a lot of data, which is very much fear-based,
Mhm.
um, and you're taking in a lot of it, of course, you're going to feel sick.
Yeah.
So
Mm.
part of it is we have to moderate, because the fear mongering on all sides
Mhm. Agreed.
is so intense right now that it's enough to just turn us all into puddles on the floor.
Yeah. Right.
And there's this thing, and I struggle with this too, about like, what's the side of it of being responsible and knowing what's going on in the world?
Mhm.
I actually think is overrated. I don't know that we need to know everything that's going on all the time, right?
Right. Instantly. Yeah.
But to be able to understand what's important for me to know, so that I can be responsible to myself, to my community, to the world at large, and what is actually really not particularly necessary. So that's one side of it. The
I
other
like
side
it.
of it is, how do we cope with uncertainty?
Mhm.
Things in the world are very uncertain right now. And it is really scary. So, how do we connect with the things that feel more grounding and more solid?
Mm.
Um, it's okay to take a break from all of it and connect with the people we love,
Mm.
connect with the things that bring us joy or satisfaction or a sense of accomplishment or a sense of peace or a sense of connection, um, and not be in this all or nothing state. And
Mm.
I say this, I mean, I understand what it is to just feel completely consumed by fear about what's coming, and how to realize that that's not all that is life. And this is where, my mindfulness practice is really helpful, because when you really are present to life, which I am not all the time. You call me some expert, and I always smirk at that because, you know,
Yeah.
so what that even means. But when you are present in your life, then you really know deep down that everything is going to change.
Mhm.
I don't know what kind of difficulty we're all going to have to get through between now and then.
Yeah.
Whatever's happening right now is going to change.
Mm.
And that's the bad things, it's the good things, and it's everything in between. So,
Yeah.
how to just be present, find the things that make us feel connected to our humanness, our humanity, the things that matter to us,
Mm.
not denying our feelings, but not being taken down by them. And that's different for each and every one of us, what
Mhm.
it is that helps us towards that. For me, like I always tell you, it's doing art,
Mhm.
it's being with my friends, being with my family, it's taking care of my plants. I'm like in my apartment now. My
Yeah.
plants now, they're just so happy.
Yeah.
Um, it's reading. I love to read. So these are the cooking, these are the
Yeah.
things that help me connect to my day-to-day life, that are meaningful to me and purposeful.
That's nice. And the key word there was that connect, right? Stay connected to the things that you enjoy, love, and that should give you some, not a cure from all of it, but some healing maybe from it, a way to cope.
When we're overwhelmed, we can always say, like, what's happening right now?
Mm-hmm.
Is like the world coming to an end right now? No, actually, it's not coming to an end right now. Right.
Right.
And
Not
then
right
the first question is, what's happening right now? The second question is, what would be helpful?
now. Mm.
Not what's going to fix this, what's going to cure it, what's going to make
Yeah.
everything go away, but what actually would be helpful right now.
Mm. Interesting. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. Oh, Jennifer Egert is amazing, folks. I'm sorry. You can find more stuff. She's throughout. There's other videos too that you have out there with FSHD Society. I know you worked with the young adults. I think also the young professional group. There's those videos
Yeah.
there people can find. Any past episodes we've done are out there. Also, you can find her at jenniferegert.com, right? I know you're going to be doing a website redo soon. I think I'm excited to see what that looks like, but
Yeah, it's going
you're
to be a
doing good about
major reboot. So I don't know if I would recommend, consider going on after
after
February.
February. Okay.
Yeah, we're
So
going to do
just
it
make sure you
immediately.
maybe put it in your, must
And
visit list.
probably have a
And
link
then,
to this if you
yeah,
air this before
yeah,
then,
yeah,
or some of the other
yeah,
things.
yeah.
Yeah.
So thanks for your time. Thanks for the conversation. This was great. This was like, this to me was good nutrition, as you said. This is good stuff. I
Good
love it.
nutrition. I always love sitting down and talking to you, Tim. Whenever you want, just shoot me a text.
Absolutely. I will
I
do
just
that.
want to wish you and your family like a really beautiful holiday and a
Oh,
happy
thank
and
you.
healthy new year and a hopeful new year.
Yeah. You as well. You as well.
Everyone in our community,
Yeah,
everyone. All right.
absolutely.
Take
Thanks,
care.
Jennifer.
Bye.
Bye-bye. That is Jennifer Egert, as she mentioned. Her new website will be up and going. JenniferEgert.com is right now the version she's not fond of, but new changes are coming. Change is good. And we talked a lot about that in this episode. Oh my gosh, so many takeaways. My notes are full. I started running out of room. The things that we covered, right? Is hope dangerous? A deep conversation. You heard a little bit about my take on certain things. My viewpoint on things can be definitely different. And that's why I like to bring Jennifer Egert in. Her viewpoints are different also. And then maybe between us, we can all have a good conversation and hopefully you enjoy listening to that. And maybe there's some nuggets that you took away that'll guide you through what can be very difficult times. I mean, the change in the season for me is very difficult when it comes to winter here in the north. It's horrible for me. I dread it. And everything I can do to fight it off, I try, but nonetheless, it is difficult time of year. Holidays don't love them, but I like them, and that's kind of where I'm at with it right now. And then I can't say I'm super excited about any new president coming in. That shift, that change every 4 years to me is nerve wracking, no matter who it may be. And I knew that was almost like a perfect pot of that boiling water just to go and like, oh my goodness, we got to talk about this. And when Jennifer messaged me, I'm like, this is I think what we have to target. And we went deep into the feelings around the fulcrum, around the disappointment of that. But that can translate to other things in our life, not just to fulcrum. How do we handle that? One of the things that came to mind, two things actually, that I try to coach people with is, it's like a 95-5 mentality. 95% of what you do, especially if you're talking about like athletics, like I usually use this for, 95% of what you're doing is like your body doing what it has to do. 5% your mind, but the 5 controls the 95. So you have to have your mind sharp. And that's an analogy that, I've always tried to use. And then of course it's the pot of boiling water, the coffee bean mentality. I've said it in past episodes a while ago that, if your life is and the area you're around is like a pot of boiling water, how do you cope with that? Are you going to, succumb to that? So the analogy is pot of boiling water, you put a carrot in, what happens to the carrot? It gets soft. You put an egg in the boiling water, it gets hard. I don't think we want either one of those. However, if you drop a coffee bean in that water, it turns the water to coffee. You change the environment you're in the best you can. Tough days will come. There's no question, right? Like Murphy's Law, so to speak. Murphy's coming. It just matter how long he's going to stay and what are you going to do about it when he comes. Bad things are going to happen and we'll figure it out. And I think as a community, Jennifer mentioned that connection is a great thing. Don't isolate yourself for too long. We have to have those quiet times, as she said. I've had them myself, but make sure you get back into the connectivity. reach out to me. I mean, my goodness, FSHD radio at FSHDsociety.org. I'd love to hear from you. You just want to conversate back and forth via email or otherwise. I'll even share we can have a phone conversation. Also use that email if you want to be on the show, if you have show ideas, topics we should be covering, guests that we should have on. I've had numerous emails come that way of, hey, we should have this PT on, or hey, you should have this person on. Jennifer Egert mentioned someone before we hit record said, I'm going to connect you with this person. I think they'd be a great guest. Keep fueling the show as we launch into 2025. We always need a full book of guests to fill up the show as the journey continues forward. So I hope you had some great takeaways today, like I did. I hope things, man, like I said, no cure, but maybe a little bit of healing and a way to do that. There is mindful practices. We didn't get deep into that, but Jennifer's site talks about that, and there's other places you can find that. It is becoming something more needed and more of value in our lives, and I think that we have to practice it. We have to exercise it, just like we would our bodies. The analogy of nutrition, what you put in is what you get out. So I hope we are putting in more and more good things and not so much the bad, and recognize which is which. Sometimes that's tough. So thanks for joining me on this episode of FSHD show called FSHD Straight Talk. The FSHD Society helps bring it to you. They're a proud partner of this show, and I love talking to people in the community. Love to talk from you again. Talk to you with FSHD radio at FSHDsociety.org is the email address. Reach out to me there. You can find all past shows on Spotify and other places you find your podcasts. Definitely rate, review. They say that helps us spread the word. Follow the podcast. That helps as well. Like to be number one on that list if we can. Thanks again for joining us. You've been listening to FSHD Straight Talk.